There we go. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I think we're going to try and keep videos and audio off for anyone who's attending, so please don't be offended. And you'll see the videos are on for the glorious Natalie, Stacey, Victoria, and myself. I think we'll just give people a couple of minutes just to make sure we've got everybody captured to join, and then we'll get started.
Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat if you would like to.
Natalie, I'm going to make you the star of the show.
It's all right. We're all here together.
There we go. Your spotlight right in the middle.
Okay.
Okay, right. Shall we get started?
Sure.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We know that there is tons of great stuff happening for Talk Money Week, so we really appreciate that you've chosen to join this session with us, all about financial vulnerability, and we'll be hearing Natalie's story on her own experiences of financial difficulties and what employers can do to really make a difference to others experiencing similar challenges. So please do introduce yourselves in the chat. We are hoping to have some time at the end for questions. So if you do have any questions, please do use the Q&A box, and hopefully we'll have time to come to those at the end, or address them over email after the session, if not. Okay, panelists, shall we quickly do an intro for ourselves? Let's go in alphabetical order, shall we? So Anna, Natalie, myself, and then Victoria.
Okay. Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Anna. I just wanted to start by saying I've seen some really horrible challenges as a result of money worries, and none of the people were low earners or lack knowledge of what to do with their money. And there are so many different things that can lead to someone being in financial distress, but there's definitely not enough genuine, impactful help out there. So one of the reasons that I'm here, one of the reasons I do what I do, is because I want to help find some solutions to help employed people be as financially resilient as they possibly can be. I believe the most impactful way of engaging employed people is with the support of, with the support of their personal finances, is via payroll, because it's 100% inclusive, and hopefully it's a positive experience. We at PayCaptain, which is where I work, we are primarily a payroll business, and I'm really delighted because PayCaptain has absolutely embraced this whole challenge and integrated some key financial wellbeing features alongside payroll to help support the people that we're paying. We've done tons of research with amazing institutions like Nest Insight, the Behavioural Insights team, and as well as a whole load of kind of internal reporting we do to assess the impact that the features that we design are having on people that we're paying, and make sure that we are able to continue that positive journey. And all of that really has sort of led me to wanting to be involved in this today, and sharing Natalie's story, and hopefully giving you some good tips and things that we are able to take away to help you and your employees.
Thanks, Anna. It's amazing. It's quite hard to follow that up. Hi, I'm Natalie, and I got involved when I wanted to become a money first aider. Completed the course because I think it's really important that organisations sort of rip the band-aid off and have the awkward, often uncomfortable conversations around finances, especially when people are in, full-time employment, part-time employment, etc., and challenges that can be faced. And this is the reason having quite a vulnerable moment and sharing my moment of vulnerability, just to show that, one, I'm not like a unicorn or anything, just a regular worker, and two, that it's a story that is, quite universal to probably more people than we think. And companies do have a lot of scope and input to things that they can put in place, small measures and just little tweaks that can be put in place to ensure the well-being of their workforce.
Thank you, Natalie. I am so thrilled that you've done the Money First Aid course and we found you as part of our community, and that you agreed to do this session today. And I just want to reiterate that it's really brave for you to be here. These are taboo conversations to be having with employers. So the fact that you were willing to come and have this conversation live with an audience, we are very, very grateful. And this story is your own. Your views are personal and not reflective of where you're currently working.
Thank you, Stacey.
I'm Stacey. I'm one of the co-founders of Money First Aid, with Rachel, who is also on the call behind the scenes today. We have worked in financial wellbeing in the workplace for a number of years together at various places now, and really identified the great progress that's been made with longer term financial planning, employer supporting savings, investments, pensions, etc. But just recognised this need for more support, specifically with more short term, immediate, unexpected life events and the financial difficulties that can come with those. Hence why we designed and launched the Money First Aid course. Finally, Victoria, please can you introduce yourself and then also give, I guess, an overview of for Talk Money Week for those that aren't aware of what this week is all about.
Good afternoon, and yes, thank you so much for asking me to come along today. I work for the Money and Pension Service, and we endorse conversations about money. So this really epitomises what we're trying to get people to do, to start conversations. For me, the workplace is really important. I'm one of the partnerships managers, and I work with a lot of employers in London, in West London, and I've got a lot of head offices there, so I get to talk to a lot of people about their workplace, financial wellbeing workplace strategies, and how they can support their teams. The workplace is transactional. There is a value exchange. We go and we give our time, we give our talent, and we receive payment in as a reward for that. So it's actually a very natural place to talk about money or to get involved in money, because it's a circular relationship. So that's why I think this is an important venue or an important event. The wider aim of Talk Money Week is really to start and continue those conversations. The workplace is one place you can do it, but take it out of the workplace as well. Open up and talk to people about money in your family, perhaps in your friendship groups. It makes us less vulnerable. If we share our hopes and fears about money, or just ask questions about whether or not people think things are a good idea, it's a great way of exposing scams, making sure that people stay safe when they're dealing with money. It is a big taboo. It is kind of the last great taboo, but we're opening up about a lot of other subjects that I think people can feel quite uncomfortable about. So I think money is one that we do need to embrace. And the momentum behind Talk Money Week is really building. We do this every year. We've been doing this for several years now, over 8 years. And the amount of attention, the amount of events that get put on, the media focus, it's really heartening to see. So don't lose that momentum when we finish this event. I'm hoping that everyone will be inspired. I'm sure they will be by Natalie. And we'll take some hints and tips away back to where you work and into the wider communities and groups that you're involved in.
Amazing. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for finding the time to be here with us today. Okay, over to our superstar, Natalie. Let's just start with just an overview, however you feel comfortable sharing a time when you have faced experiencing financial difficulties in your life.
Okay, thank you. So coming from what can be considered to be a, low socio-economic background, single parent, raised at home, income support, all of it, I think the easier question would be to say, when have I not experienced financial difficulties? It's, a way of life, but most recently, like especially from the conversation that we had and sort of how we came together, was basically finding myself working full time but homeless, and at the time working for a financial institution, which is interesting, which is where we speak about the taboo. And not only that, it was where, speaking to colleagues that were in my team, there were two other people that were in similar positions. And being a solution focused person, because, being financial difficulties do make you quite resilient. I'm like, well, what can I do about it? So I had the idea, thinking, feeling that as part of an offering for, peers, that we could offer a financial wellbeing hub in the workplace, and looking into how we could go about that, which is how I was able to do some research and find the money first aid course, because understanding that, can I just say, for everybody's peace of mind, we do not give advice. Can I just make that clear? We don't give advice. We are fully aware that we cannot give advice unless we are FCA regulated advisors. We know this, we are aware. But what we can do is we can signpost, support, offer just those directions for people from different socio-economic backgrounds with different needs. As you were saying earlier, it might not just be that somebody's like at the sort of bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, and is struggling. It could be somebody that maybe is like a level 5 or a 6, but then has gone through an issue with separation. And there's different ways and different experiences that people can bring. So financial difficulty isn't limited to your financial or socio-economic bracket.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that really stuck with me when I first had this conversation with you was I think I naively saw, before kind of the money first aid stuff, homelessness kind of being like the end result of financial difficulties. But you really opened my eyes around actually how costs continue to spiral, and like the ripple effects of finding yourself in that situation on costs increasing elsewhere.
Absolutely. So one thing that I've noticed, because I'm a very I'm neurospicy, so I'm very much pattern-based person. And one of the things that I noticed, especially with the budget happening recently as well, it's all in the news, and it's the USA elections today as well. Right, neurospicy, focus, Natalie, focus. I've noticed that in terms of economics, there's what tends to be a trickle-down effect. So what I've noticed is the higher up you are in the sort of financial hierarchy, the more protections there are in place, and the more support there is in terms of tax havens and ways of basically protecting your assets and income. And the lower down you get on the financial totem pole, the more expensive things become. So for instance, you might have somebody who's bought a house, finished paying for it, I don't know, in the 90s or something, unicorn. So, they will have things like their standing charge, but there's certain things put in place to help. On the very bottom of that, you might have somebody who is sleeping rough. So even simple things as sitting down and having a meal then becomes having to hire somewhere, whether it's a hotel or getting a room somewhere to sit down and have the meal. Then you've got to make sure that you're buying things that are more expensive, because you can't just, oh yeah, chuck it on the stove, because you might not have a stove. So there's additional costs that rack up for the people that are at the bottom of the financial totem pole. For myself, I discovered it when looking for somewhere to live. So having to do overtime to make sure that I've got enough money to save up. So my time is then being taken away from looking for somewhere to live, only to be told, no, we want you to be earning a more, even though you've got the money for the deposit and the month down, we want you to be earning over a certain amount. Being a sole income as well, that also becomes more expensive. So there are lots of ways that are not thought about, they're not really considered, but they are a huge part in our working dynamic, as in like, okay, partner and a pet or what have you, like, so there's the automatic assumption of comfortability because there's two incomes in a household that will cover everything. But I think it's important to start from, right, there's this individual and their income. We can't depend on if they have additional in case they don't. So it's really important to ensure that that person standalone is okay to manage.
Totally.
That answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Some really good examples in there. And I did look up again after we had a chat that you've already said that you're definitely not alone, and you're making changes in your organization as a result of realizing that. But around 75,000 people who are facing homelessness in the UK are in employment, part-time or full-time, are in employment. So what I wanted to ask you is, when you were facing homelessness, like, how did that impact how you showed up to work, how you performed at work, like who you were at work?
That's such an great question, and it's an important one to ask, because based on the dynamics, it's, first of all, it's incredibly embarrassing. Like, it's not that anybody's done or said anything, but the culture of the workplace is an expectation of functionality, if that makes sense, just societally, not in any particular workplace. It's like, so it's embarrassing personally, like, okay, I'm working full time. Personally, I'm working with money and I'm homeless. Like, the two don't go together. So there's that. And then professionally, there's added pressure. Personally, it's not from the organization, and I want to make that very clear. But there's that thing of, I'm already at the bottom, and then among my peers, I'm below them again. So there's that added pressure of, I'm not going to then ruin the only thing that I do have, which is my professional reputation. So what happens is there's added pressure to perform, to be able to say, well, just because I've got this going on, it doesn't mean to say that I'm not capable, because it makes you question your capability, because you're not able to provide a roof over your head like regular population. So it's quite interesting that actually, like, I can say this, and it is a flex, and it's something that I'm proud of, that although my performance didn't drop, it actually increased, because it was the only thing that I had to hold on to say that I am still capable and, a functioning adult. Ooh. And but the knock-on effect is it becomes more expensive, because stress, burnout, health, because I also have underlying health issues as well, which were affected. And yeah, yeah. So
I think those, like you willing to share that, I think employers listening are just such important insights into how, you know, the individuals in their team might be feeling. And you've raised some things that I'd certainly never thought of before. So thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna invite Anna to ask you some questions because I know she wanted to as well.
all right.
Crikey, Natalie, that's really, really emotional. Thank you. Okay, try and persevere.
Good, I'm good. It's better out than in.
Oh, okay. Well, the area that I sort of wanted to try and draw out was around thinking about your personal experience again. What do you think would have been the sort of things that could have made a difference, or indeed did make a difference, that your employer would have been able to do, or, you know, thinking in context of all the people that are here today, what kind of things do you think they could do to help people in a similar kind of financial experience?
I'd first like to say that, you know, I'm incredibly lucky that my organization and, you know, people that I'm quite close with incredibly supportive. I mean, even if it's just a safe space to be able to vent, because one of the things that I discovered, like I was doing a bit of research while, you know, thinking about what I wanted to speak about, and there was a study that was done where there was is in 2021, where approximately 40% of employers that were asked and polled sort of said that they would consider firing someone if they were unemployed. And it's a really real consideration, being somebody that is homeless, sorry. So it's like, oh my god, because if you then get fired, it's harder to get a job if you haven't got an address and all the things. So there's that compounded. So having a safe space to even be able to share it without it, you know, feeling like it's going to be held against you or you're going to lose your job, support put in place. Like there was a colleague, like basically a friend of a colleague, a friend of mine, their boss's boss was like, oh, send them this link, ask them to try here. And it's an organization that is still helping me at the moment with with one thing or another. But that was a real lifeline, and which, even though it was a need for the support at the time, it made me realize the importance of having like a money first aid, that posting hub. It was like confirmation, because right, yes, see, this is actually the help. And they were saying the same thing: we can't tell you what to do, we can't advise you, but you can try this, you can try this. And just to have that, knowing that that space is there, is just crucial and fundamental to the shoring up of the, especially your foundation, like your foundational stuff. And I've gone a little bit off topic, haven't I? So I was lucky that I had that safe space. And you know, for all that's like sort of logical, basically, I really want to stress the importance, like I was saying, of securing your organization from the bottom up as opposed to the top down. Because we find that, you know, we speak about our founders, our shareholders and things like that, and making sure they're happy. But if we as organizations, the people that make the policy, write the policy, that if we can shore up our foundational workforces in the ones that are at the bottom, it means that everything else is strengthened, so it benefits everyone. So does that answer your question? I realize I've gone a
It
little
does.
bit.
No, it does, definitely. I'm just interested, when, you know, what was it that created that safe space for you? What was it that made that feel safe for you?
So we have various sort of We have various groups and focus groups that especially support and target different sectors that make up our workforce. And as part of that, there were some mentors like available, and I'm lucky enough to have mentors from different levels. So what it does is it informs the organization on a wider level, just different people's experiences and having those conversations. So that's what I think it's safe. I mean, it's important for organizations in general, not just ours, to have those safe spaces. And I feel the way that it should be done is that in the same way that we have, say, a lot of places have a mental first aid sort of hub space that employees, it's known, it's in the handbook that you can go to for mental health, because we realize the importance of mental health. I think financial health and financial education, especially in the climate that we're in with the changes that are coming in and what have you, I think it is incredibly important to have that same culture of that organizations as standard have a space, because it's quite likely that there is going to be a percentage of your workforce that is impacted by these changes and are possibly struggling in one way or another. And it might, and where I speak for people that are foundational, because that's my experience, it's not just foundational. It could be, like I say, somebody where increase in stamp duty on a house or what have you, that they might have had a rental property and that's caused them to go into problems. Or it might be that they have an ISA and the changes that mean their tax bracket has changed and that it's caused them. There's all difference. It can be a gambling addiction because the stresses are, there's all different aspects that impact our financial well-being. And I think, as it's one of the fundamental sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like food, clothing, shelter, I think. And there was something that he said, Victoria, which is about the relationship. And I think this is something that we do need to understand. As employers and organizations, we very much occupy for a lot of our workforce a parental role, because actually as an employer, we have that role of, yes, can you provide the safety for me? And as an employee, it's like a child space, like, because we spend most of our time, our day, every day, we spend most of our time at work, for those of us that work full time. So I think it's important. I think I want to stress the importance of the relationship that actually employers do hold, and empower employers to know that they inhabit a really integral space in their employees' lives. And with little small things that can be put in place, we can just provide that support to make it a more, once we empower our employees, our children, so to speak, it means that there's a more harmonious, productive house, which means that our targets, our stakeholders, our shareholders, that's what I mean by, if we secure the foundation, everybody benefits.
I love that. I love this sort of ethos of, caring about what's happening in your employees' lives and making sure they've got sufficient support and that all voices are represented. Thank you, Natalie. I'm going to pass back over to Stacey.
Great. Well, I guess let's bring this together with the Talk Money week theme of do one thing. So perhaps I can ask Victoria and Anna for their thoughts on, having heard Natalie's story, having, had conversations with employees facing financial difficulties in the hundreds or probably thousands. What one thing can MAPS and PayCaptain provide that you think could make a real difference to employees facing these sorts of challenges? Victoria first.
I was going to say, do you want me to take that one first? It's a tricky one to, I think, define it as one thing.
It's a hard question.
We have a service, our Money Helper service, which is available for anyone to use. Employers can use it to share with their workforce all of the tools, all of the guidance, information and support. Natalie was very good earlier on to emphasise the difference between guidance, support and giving advice around money. I think that's something that's really important. It's something that we don't do either. So we're very much in the guidance, information, support space. So that's the first thing. And I did put something in the chat. Money Helper is there for everybody, and it's a really good, reliable and trustworthy information resource. I think that's important. The pre-hysteria before the budget, I think, was very interesting. All of these things that could happen might happen where nobody really knew, and that's very unstable and very unsettling for people, because actually the impact, a lot of people, particularly people like us, people that Natalie is describing, go down the money totem pole within an organisation, probably not going to be adversely affected by the budget, but all of the chatter in the media attention about particularly around personal taxation can be very unsettling. So for the facts, Money Helper is a great place to go. And we've also recently, well, actually straight after the budget, released a sensible, trustworthy blog all about it. So anyone can go and have a look at that, stick it on your work intranets and share it with your teams, just really to allay people's fears and so they can understand what's happening around that particular piece. So I think that's probably the first thing I would say. The other thing that Natalie talked about is the inextricable link of mental health and money impacting each other. If you've got money troubles, you're going to feel stressed, and that can make people behave in different ways. Natalie's example of actually making her probably overperform or have that desire to overperform, I think is really important, and it's a great one to call out, because you've then got people who become vulnerable to burnout. So I think that's a really important synergy to understand, and it just really describes the complexity of what we're dealing with when we're talking about money and money within the workplace. For employers who are on here thinking, well, what can I do? I don't necessarily have a strategy at the moment. One of the things you can do is remind your workforce of the good things you're already doing for them. So most people will have workplace-based pension. It's a great asset for your workforce when they retire, but all their lives until they retire, because it's something that they can gift to family, they can use to protect dependents. That could be children, it could be parents. So remind them about the simple things that you're doing for them. And the workplace pension is a great place to start. And I would say if you're going to do one thing and you haven't got any kind of bells and whistles, well, remind them about the nomination form. Tell your staff to make sure that the nomination form for their workplace pension is up to date, so that they've got a partner, or they've got children, or they've got parents that would like to benefit if they don't get to retire and pick up that pension. That's a really good place to start. And it's really easy because it's already there.
Great, thank you, Victoria. And I know PayCaptain have launched many innovative features around supporting people with financial difficulties, Anna. So maybe you can share some of those with us.
Definitely. I mean, God, I hope everyone's taking notes. There's a massive tick list of things that you can be doing. Thank you, Victoria, as well. Like, there is a lot, isn't there? I think one of the key things for me in terms of how PayCaptain goes about supporting people is to really lean into the personalisation piece, and just picking up on this. It could be anyone can go through a financial crisis, and actually most people will benefit from some level of financial support in terms of education around what is happening in the world. And the way that we've designed the financial resilience tools within PayCaptain, falling under this umbrella called Smart Pay, is that we use the Money and Pension Service financial fitness score to do a sort of an assessment of how financially resilient somebody is currently, what their current financial fitness is. And then we combine that with other key bits of data that we hold on them, because we run their payroll, so we might know, how old they are, how much they get paid, etc. And we're able to use all of that data then to make suggestions to them around ways that they can increase that financial fitness. So if you consider somebody who's scoring perhaps a little bit lower in terms of financial fitness, we would look at ways to encourage them either with signposting. So if they've indicated that they've got some challenges with debt, we can signpost some resources for that. And if we've got people that are scoring slightly higher or are indicating that savings are required, we start people on that savings journey using payroll automated savings. And that is probably, I think, if you look across all of the research, the best way to start somebody saving as well, just getting them into that initial savings habit. So we can use all of that data that we've got to suggest that, Stacey, let's use you for example. You could start saving £10 a month, and then as you're starting to build up those savings, or things happen in your employment journey, like you get a pay rise, we might suggest that you save a little bit more, and then you're building up this instant access savings buffer. And within PayCaptain, you can do that in an FSCS protected interest bearing savings account. Now that's new. So that you've got all of that money there working for you, and it's happening in the background. It's away from your online banking. So it's almost like you've got this lovely little hub of cash that you're building up, ready for whatever it is that you want to use it for, potentially to help buffer some kind of financial crisis, but maybe for something more positive as well. So that's probably what sort of the personalization thing, I think, is probably one of the main things, but there are other bits in there. The stuff in the news recently around the £31 billion worth of lost pension pots. We've got pension dashboards so that you can track your pension pots. You don't have to lose them. Not great if you've already lost it, but log those things into your pension dashboard in PayCaptain. You can track all of your pension pots side by side. We're also able to do some checks in terms of unclaimed benefits. There's another £23 billion worth of unclaimed benefits out there every year. So we're able to do some checks using the information we've already got, as you've completed Smart Pay and you've got the payroll data as well within PayCaptain, to suggest to you if you have, if there's a high probability that you're missing out on some of those benefits. So all of those things are, Smart Pay works in a really clever way to be able to provide all of these suggestions and help people at key points with really, really important, meaningful suggestions that could support them.
Amazing. It's been and I remember when we were preparing for this session, and we were talking about kind of what really makes a difference to employees like Natalie. You both gave really interesting examples that doesn't actually cost the employer very much. So, over recent years, we've seen huge financial wellbeing apps and platforms and digital solutions being launched that employers can pay for. But to make a real difference to an individual employee, it can be things that don't cost that much. So Victoria, I remember you talking about an employer anonymously supporting someone exit a difficult relationship, and finances were the one thing that were holding them back. Perhaps you can give a nod to that. And Anna, we were talking about expenses, just asking an employee to pay for a Christmas party or a team lunch, and that can really knock their monthly cash flow off course. So yeah, perhaps if either of you wanted to comment on those inexpensive but really meaningful ways employers can support employees.
I mean, expenses is a really interesting one, because it's sort of the norm that you would be paying for things and then claiming it back at the end of your pay period. And depending on your role, that can actually create huge financial stress during the month. I mean, even when I was working in my 20s and I used to have to travel a lot, I ended up sitting in hotel rooms where I'd be eating bowls of cereal that I'd have taken with me, because I'd have paid all of my money out for the train and the hotel room, and I couldn't afford to eat while I was there. So what we offer via PayCaptain is an opportunity to be able to reimburse expenses immediately. So you can put your expense receipt in and you can get that money back immediately from your expenses paid directly back to you. So you're never out of pocket.
Amazing. Anything to add, Victoria?
Actually, I think that's a great example, Anna, and I can remember that as well. The expectation, that people, particularly around travel, anything to do with travel, I think that's something that can be really tricky. We don't have solutions for that, but I think that was a really good one to call out. I mean, I work with a number of employers who offer different types of support. I've got some who I would say are kind of gold standard, and others who perhaps aren't because they're not as big. But there are things that can be done. Gold standard, I would say, is one employer that I work with. They have a company credit card, and if they feel that they have an employee, if they've got an employee who's perhaps unsafe, is living in an unsafe environment, they will book, a local. I was going to say a brand. I'm going to say Travelodge. The other, obviously, the other chains, other budget hotel chains, are available. But that's a real caring for somebody, caring for an employee, and it's probably also something that people would be afraid of doing, but it's also an exceptional circumstance. So it's weighing up that risk. Do you basically have a duty of care? Do you help protect somebody, particularly as they're probably a valuable member of your team? So I think it's, some of these things can sound scary. People say, well, goodness knows how much is that going to cost us? But I think if you think about how often those scenarios are going to occur, it suddenly becomes far more within your gift to give. And also there's opportunity for, during the pandemic, I talked to lots of employers who were concerned about their teams, and they said, well, actually, we've got a canteen, or we work in food retail. We can feed our people. We can help our people that way. So there's quite often things that actually aren't going to cost an awful lot where you can help. Everyone, I think, could probably be a little bit creative. But I think probably the most important help, and Natalie's talked about this, is listening, is having somewhere they can go and be listened to, and someone that they can talk to. And often that won't necessarily be a supervisor or a line manager. People will want to have a more peer-based conversation. And it may be that they decide after that they're going to escalate. And I'm going to mention again the benefits that employers are already offering. Lots of employers will have benefits platforms where there are discounts and things available, but an awful lot of those also come with some kind of helpline, some kind of support line. So do remember to remind people what's already there for them, because lots of people forget. We forget these things are there because we don't need them until we need them. So repetition is important, not too often, but just make sure you put it out there. I think it's something that you're probably paying for. Make sure that people know that it's there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Really good suggestions. Unsurprisingly, the one thing that I would say would be to train at least one person in your organisation to be a money first aider, as is Natalie. Well, Victoria and Anna have also both done the course and are money first aiders. But Natalie's a great example of how, the course equips people, like Victoria said, to have those peer-to-peer conversations, where the person that they are speaking to feels trained and able to have these compassionate, confidential conversations around money, and have resources to signpost people for various different life events that they might be experiencing. I think we're up to about 45 plus free, credible expert resources that already exist, that people either aren't accessing because they're not aware that they're there, they don't know how to access them, or they have some sort of shame around accessing them. So a money first aider can support them through that process of getting them to the support that they need. We're going to open it up to questions for the last 15 minutes. So if you're thinking of any burning questions, please do drop those in the chat or Q&A. Whilst you're thinking, perhaps, Natalie, I can ask you, I know that you are very passionate about this, and you've got big ideas as to how you want to take your money first aid course forward into your organisation. So if you want to share any of your plans with us, please do.
Yeah, sure. Like, so I came up with what I feel is like would be a standardized way of incorporating money first aid into an organization, which is by having like a financial first aid hub where people can come, because something that you touched upon, which was about maybe not necessarily wanting to speak to your manager about something, because that only works on the assumption that there's a good working relationship with your manager. But if there's not, it's sometimes good to be able to step away from your immediate workspace and say, right, okay, it'd be like if it wasn't remote, it'd be okay, this room here is the well-being room. Like, so I'm going to step in here and see. It'd be like similar to a university, or where there's like the student support or advice area. Do you see what I mean? That there needs to be a designated space that it's known within an organization that people come to. So for things like, it could be something as simple as, I'm struggling, when we have a group social and they say expense something, is it all right if you have a word with my manager? It could be that it empowers us to speak with members of the team from Financial Wellbeing or the HR team to basically, strengthen those relationships that are there. So I'm working on that. And then just wanted to share it. You're speaking about saving and, with PayCaptain and how it can be done. I wanted to just share a silly little anecdote, which was at one point, like, just stress wise, I was eating like a packet of Skittles daily. And I'm just like, I'm not in the space anymore, being a middle-aged woman who can be eating a bag of sweeties every day. So what I did was, I was like, okay, I'm trying to save up for somewhere to live, but you know what? This is a stress coping mechanism that's not that great. So I started chucking my Skittles money into an investment ISA every month, and I've still kept it going. I haven't touched the Skittles since either. But just seeing that, I'm like, seeing that grow, and I'm like, okay, wow. I didn't think I had anything to save, because financially on paper there wasn't anything, but just by not sacrificing, just making that change. So instead of eating the Skittles, I'm saving them.
That's
Just
amazing. Skittles for savings. I love that story. Thank you. Someone messaged me separately to say that they can't add any questions. So apologies if other people's.
I just had to play with the settings, so try again now. Sorry, that's my fault.
If somebody does want a question and you tried before, please do try again in case it does work. In the meantime, Natalie, Anna, Victoria, myself, the chat seems to be working for us. So let's drop in our ways that people can contact us if they'd like to follow up with any of us after the session today. So we'll put our emails or LinkedIn's in the chat. But yes.
I'm ever so sorry, I can't comment in the chat. But I also wanted to just say as well, in terms of having a designated space that is around the well-being of your workforce, I think as well a benefit for employers is that it's an incredible possible resource for gathering data and getting a temperature of what's actually happening for your workforce. Because, best case scenario, it doesn't get used very often, and that would be a real indication that there is good health in your workforce. But if you're finding that, I don't know, after the budget, you're noticing that there are a lot of people coming through for a specific issue, it might be helpful to form like your policies and structure to understand that there's a particular issue that it seems to be recurringly happening for your workforce. So it empowers employers to become these really sort of safe, competent parents to the employee children. And data it's invaluable. And then the last thing that I'd like to say, in case anybody's thinking of stuff, is when we are, you know, making our policies and ensuring that we comply with risk and all these things, I think it's really important to have a voice of your employees when we're speaking and formulating things that apply to them. It's fundamental.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it is. And yes, thank you very much for role modeling and demonstrating exactly the value of having those conversations today, Natalie.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, I'll ask the panelists for any final thoughts in a moment. But we will share the recording of the session today with everybody who's attended and registered after the session. So if you do have any questions, please do reply to that email or use the contact details we've included in the chat. And please do also share the recording with anybody else in your organizations or peer groups who you think might find it really interesting to also hear Natalie's story. But to finish things off, Victoria first, any final comments from today?
This is actually prompted by Natalie's comment about her Skittles fund, which I think is a great idea. Just really about some of the tools that we have on Money Helper that you might want to check out and share with your workforce. One is the Money Midlife MOT, which is a great one for, Natalie's going to have a look at that, which is a great one if you're lucky enough to have got to around 40, but it's absolutely fine to use it really probably any time, but it's good at that point because you have a certain probably more complex financial life than if you're starting out, but it's actually really easy to use. It's like a survey, and it's quite encouraging because it will give you a situation analysis and tell you what you're already doing that's good. And I'm sure that Natalie would get a pat on the back for the Skittles fund. But also it allows you to do a bit of goal setting as well for sort of medium and long term, which I think is really important. As we move through our lives, we have different relationships with money, depending on what life stage we're at. And we go back and forwards a little bit. So having something that allows you to, I think, really focus on where you want to get to, but also give yourself a bit of a pat on the back of where you've been, I think is an encouraging thing. We've also got some really good pension resources. Anna mentioned this, finding pensions you might have forgotten about if you've had a bit of a portfolio career. It's really valuable. It's a great way of making people feel more resilient, thinking they've got a little bit more behind them for retirement than they thought they did have. So that's a really good thing to check out. We've got all of the information about how to track lost pensions. We've got a pensions calculator so you can work out how much you're going to have when you retire, and if there's a gap between what your expectation is and where you are now, what you can do to help fill those gaps. So those are kind of sort of more future proofing stuff. And if you've got people who are stressed or in difficulty, cost of living challenges are still very much out there. We have got some great tools to support around that. We've got a whole section on it, but a really handy one is the bill prioritizer. You've got lots of things that you need to pay and one paycheck. Put everything in there and it will basically grade the bills into which need to be paid now, which can be left a little bit longer. There's also hints and tips on how to reduce and which ones to reduce as a priority. So if you've got credit card debt that might be more expensive, for example. There's also information on how to talk to creditors, which is the most important thing. That if there is stuff that you can't pay, talk to the people who you owe the money to. I can't stress that one enough. And most organisations, whether it's utilities or credit card companies or media companies, will have a team of people who are waiting to take your calls. They will have people who are trained specifically to help people who are stressed or distressed because they are finding it difficult to pay their bills. This is something that's been in place for quite a long time, but with the new consumer duty regulations, it's something that's really at the forefront of people's minds about how to treat their customers fairly and properly. And there are breathing space opportunities and options in there, and they're all well versed in those. So I'd also urge you to share that kind of information. Again, all the templates, all the information is available freely on Money Helper, and it's a great place to start. And finally, the last one I'm going to mention, just because it is important, if people are really in difficulty, missing priority bills, missed a couple of payments on priority bills, then we've got our debt advice locator tool, and this is where you can put your postcode in and find out where to go for regulated debt advice. And this is not something that we offer as a service as Money Helper, we commission it. And this is advice. This is in the regulated space. These are people who are trained to help people who are really struggling with their money and have real money problems. So that's worth looking at, because it can find you a face-to-face service or a digital service or a telephone service. So there is debt advice, free debt advice services out there to suit really whatever medium you feel comfortable having that conversation in. But again, I would stress it's really important that if people are missing payments, that they do go and seek that support. And I'll finish it there. Thank you.
So much on offer.
Hold on, you
Oh, you're on
muted.
mute, Stacey.
Oh, sorry. Almost got
Wouldn't be a webinar if someone didn't do it.
I've just dropped all of the links that Victoria referred to in the chat. Anna, any final thoughts from you?
I think the biggest sort of takeaway from today is just create that safe space in your work environment that's completely free. The way that you position the culture of your business to be inclusive and kind, and have that signposting in place for the many different life events, because we're just focused on finance today, but there are many different things that can happen. Create that safe culture that's free. Do that in your business. Obviously, you know, there are lots of other tools that you can put in place. Get some money first aider training in there as well, so that people are able to have those really good conversations in a really confident and considered way. And it, you know, obviously I'm a strong believer in tools that are associated with payroll, so look at what you can do for people with that, from that perspective, whether it be automated payroll savings. PayCaptain also offers access to emergency cash, so if you haven't got that savings buffer, you can access a portion of your savings for free, which is really important, so there's no cost to the employee of that. Be wary, I think, of people that are trying to charge employees for things at points when they are financially vulnerable.
Totally. Thank you. And finally, a huge thank you from all of us, Natalie, for sharing your story today. Yeah, and for being vulnerable and openly emotional, and just, you know, giving us such valuable insights about not only the finances, but how it affects your work and your life, and your health. And yeah, it's been really fascinating, and I'm very grateful for you for sharing that with us today.
Definitely.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Thank you for having this conversation. It's important, and that's my final thought that I'd like to leave is, don't be afraid to have the conversation. You're already doing things, so let's build on what we're already doing, and just to understand that financial education and literacy is so important and will just make things better for everyone. The more financially literate your workforce is, the better performance there will be. And I'd like to end with that. So thank you so much. Money first aid, man. Like, it is really the way forward.
Well, I knew I could rely on you for a great mic drop moment. You delivered. Alrighty, it's 1:30. So thank you, Anna. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Natalie. And thank you to everybody who joined. And hopefully more conversations will follow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.